In this video, we will be talking about the quadratic equation. So a quadratic equation is an equation containing a second-degree binomial. For example, it always comes in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals to y, where a cannot be 0 in order for it to be a quadratic equation. Because if a was 0, then we would have the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to y. And anything that's being multiplied by 0 would give us 0. So then we would be left with bx plus c equals y, where here it would become a linear equation, not a quadratic equation. So in this video right here, we would be working with the quadratic equation, and in here we will talk about different ways of how to obtain the x-intercepts of a quadratic equation. And remember, to obtain an x-intercept of a quadratic equation, we need to set y equals 0. So in this video, we would see our form of a quadratic equation as ax squared plus bx plus 0 plus c is equal to 0. So in this example, we are asked to solve the quadratic equation. Now, before we move on, we need to remember a property. The 0 property, where it says that a times b is equal to 0. And in this case, if we want this expression to equal to 0, either a has to equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. So whenever we're solving a quadratic equation, we would be using this property. So the first thing we need to do, we have 4x squared plus 15x plus 9 equals to 0. Remember, we are trying to find the x-intercept. So here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to factor out this equation by using grouping. So the method grouping tells you, first we need to identify my a, which here a is equal to 4, my b, which is equal to 15, and my c is equal to 9. So the grouping property tells us that we draw this X shape. We need to find two numbers that multiply to a times c. Right here, a times c is 4 times 9, which is equal to 36. So we need to find two numbers that multiply to 36 and that add up to 15. We need to find numbers that will multiply together, we obtain 36. So right here, we know that 1 times 36. We know that 2 times 18 gives you 36. We know that 3 times 12 gives you 36. 4 times 9 gives you 36. And 6 times 6 gives you 36. So we need positive 36 because we know that a positive number times a positive number equals a positive number. And we know that a negative times a negative is equal to a positive as well. However, since our b value is a positive number, we know that both multiples that are going to multiply to 36, they both have to be positive. So with that being said, we need to see which of these pairs, when we add them together, gives us a positive 15. So we know that it's 3 times 12, because 3 plus 12 is equal to 15. So now, after we find our pair that when we multiply together gives us 36 and add together gives us 15, we will put the factors right here. Now, after we find our factors, we need to take into consideration our a. So now we need to divide both factors by a, which here is a 4. And after that, we need to reduce our factors. So 3/4, that's the simplest it can go. However, 12 over 4, this number, they go both into 4, so that gives us 3 over 1. After we do that step, now we need to notice that we're going to leave it as a fraction because the denominator part of the fraction is what gets attached to the x in the factor, and the numerator part of the fraction what gets added to the factor. So now here we have 4x squared plus 15x plus 9 is equal to 0. Our first factor is going to be 4x, so the 4 comes from this, 4x plus 3, and we have used our first factor, which is this. Now our second factor, it's going to be the denominator gets attached to the x, so it's going to be x plus the numerator gets added to the factor. So x plus 3 is our factored form. So 4x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals to 0. We can check our work by expanding our factors, and we should obtain the equation we started with. So now after we have our factored form, we're going to use the 0 property. We're going to say that in order for this to equal 0, either this factor has to be 0 or this factor has to be 0. So now we set each of these factors. So 4x plus 3 is equal to 0, and x plus 3 is equal to 0. And then we solve for x. So by subtracting 3, we get 4x minus 3, and then x is equal to negative 3/4. And here we subtract 3, so x is equal to negative 3. Hence, we say that our x-intercept for this quadratic equation is x equals negative 3/4, and x is equal to negative 3.